Okay, it says the,
All right. I think we are live. I'm just making sure we are live. Okay, there we go. All right, so I want to welcome everyone to our new course on Jewish meditation, titled Meditation from Sinai, as you've seen multiple times. And I want to welcome all of you on Zoom and those of you on Facebook. And this class will be recorded. This course actually will be recorded and broadcast on YouTube. I will send out the link in the weekly email, as well as on Facebook. It'll be live for all of you to view afterwards. So I just want to thank you all for joining, and thank you to our anonymous sponsor who requested to remain anonymous, and to those of you, to our anonymous sponsor for donating towards the student books and enabling those who did not get it yet to get it free of charge. So thank you, anonymous. So here we go. Just making sure you guys are here on Zoom, because I want to make sure that it's, yeah, there we go. Okay. Sorry for the technical difficulties. We're a few minutes late, but here goes. So they tell a story of a rabbi who approached his congregant at the end of the prayer service, and the rabbi offers him, a giant hug, and he cries out to his congregant, "Shalom Aleichem, welcome back." And this congregant looks at his rabbi and says, "Welcome back, Rabbi, I didn't travel anywhere. I've been at services every day of the week." So the rabbi smiles and says, "I noticed that during today's prayers, your mind was on your upcoming business trip to London. Now that the service is over, you landed back here. So over the next 6 lessons, we are going to travel together on a beautiful and a wonderful journey through the fascinating spaces and, as you want to call it, the scenic pathways of Jewish mindful and meditative practices. And we're going to learn to be more deeply aware of ourselves and see the world through a richer lens." I look forward to you all being here during the lessons, not daydreaming. This is the point of meditation. And this course is going to be primarily built around Jewish meditation, meditation from within Jewish tradition, and in the context of Jewish life as well. So if you turn to your student books, page 2, for those of you who have your books, I know some of you did not pick it up yet, so I apologize. But for those of you who have your student books, if you can open to page number 2, we have our first exercise of our Jewish meditation class, exercise 1.1. I want you, if you are viewing this, to record 3 things that you hope to gain through this study. Through this course, what do you hope to gain? And only those of you on Zoom are the people that I can really interact with in live time. So if there is anything that you hope to gain, and you're willing to share it, that would be very, very helpful. Sandy, if there's anything you want to share, or Mark or Fran. Your speaker isn't great, Fran.
I'm sorry.
There you go. There you go.
Who else is taking the class? Just that, you said there's 7 people.
There are people on Facebook.
Oh,
There we go. Okay. Okay, so we are going to ask you, those of you who are joining on Zoom, those of you joining on Facebook, to record 3 things that you hope to gain through this course, through this study. Any thoughts?
I'd like a more calmer life with Hashem, especially. Because
Okay.
sometimes I just, question his love.
All right. So you question his love, you want a calmer life, something more deep, a deeper connection.
Deeper, yes.
Okay. That's one way to begin. So I want to tell you what this course is and what it isn't. What this course is not, it is not a mini retreat for meditation. And we're not going to be sitting around and meditating for an hour and a half each week. We're going to be practicing meditation, and we're going to be experimenting with a number of different forms of meditation. But we're also going to backtrack and go explore the spiritual technology behind meditation. And we're going to learn about the history and the goals of Jewish meditation and the roles that it plays in Jewish life. So it's going to be kind of a hybrid of study, of academic study, and also applied practice. Throughout this lesson and throughout the course, we're going to have Rabbi Label Wolf, who is a profound lecturer. Definitely one of his more famous things is about meditation, Jewish meditation, and we're going to be practicing his meditations in practice, actually, with a pre-recorded video. We're going to have 2 of them during this class itself. So watching live and joining live on Zoom, there are probably a few of you with a variety of backgrounds in meditation. Some of you have taken a meditation class before. Some of you meditate regularly. I don't know, Sandy and Fran and Mark, what you guys do, but some of you may just have never tried it. So before we begin learning about Jewish meditation and how it's practiced, we have to define some basic terms. What is meditation, right? So again, I'm going to interact with those of you on Zoom. I'm going to ask those of you on Zoom to take a piece of paper, take a pen and paper, and to please sketch for me an image of what you think is a person meditating. How would you envision a person meditating? So I'll give you 30 seconds.
I guess we have to.
Fran, you with us?
Yeah. I'm doing the pencil.
Sandy, what did you draw up? Let me see.
Well, I don't know if you want to see it, but I drew a person with their legs crossed and their hands in their lap with their eyes closed.
Okay, very good.
Best I could.
Fran, we don't hear you, Fran.
We
just
can't
see
hear you.
I'm sorry, it's Mark's computer. The eyes are closed.
Eyes are closed, okay.
Mhm.
Deep thinking.
Thinking, okay. Mark, how do you envision someone who meditates? What's your image of a meditation?
And,
Can't hear you.
You got to speak closer to the computer screen.
I can't hear you. What's wrong with the computer? Don't the speaker.
Here you go. Got to be closer to the screen.
Is that better?
So the image that initially comes to my mind is maybe a guru sitting on a mountaintop, some spiritual visions, maybe a devout Hasidic Jew in prayer. So I want to tell you a little secret. The secret is that whatever you drew as the image for someone meditating is actually right, but it's also wrong. Because meditation has no set image, which means that meditation can really be applied to any image. If you look in the dictionary, the word meditate is defined as to engage in contemplation or reflection. Meditation actually comes from the Latin word meditare, which means to measure, to think, to contemplate, to ponder. So whether or not you think of yourself this way, I have some news for you guys, for Sandy, Fran, and Mark, and all of you who are joining us on Facebook. And I apologize, and I know Dorit is watching, but I don't know, because she told me she's watching, but there are a lot of you who are watching, and I don't know, so I apologize. Feel free to comment on the chat box. I know that you're here, but I'm sorry that I can't interact as well over Facebook Live, because we're doing it from Zoom, but I'm pretty sure that whether you realize or not, we're all chronic meditators. The thing is that we're unintentional meditators. And I'll tell you how. I'll tell you what I mean by that. When you dwell on a problem in your life and you allow yourself to sulk in the problem, you're actually meditating. When you daydream about your upcoming vacation and you get excited about the vacation, you're actually meditating. So we really meditate all the time. And I'm sure that we can all think of many more examples in our experiences just today, literally today. But most of the time, our thoughts slip into a meditation without even intending to slip into one. The goal of meditative practices is actually to do it intentionally, not unintentionally, to do it on purpose. So in this course, what we're going to be defining meditation as the effort to purposely focus your mind and develop a deeper awareness to achieve a result that is very much desired. Now, what does this have to do with Judaism? Again, we didn't get to the actual meditation yet, but what does meditation have to do with Judaism? Why am I, a rabbi, standing up here teaching you about how to think deliberately, to think with purpose? So going into this course, some of you might be wondering if meditation is really a Jewish thing, or maybe if Jewish meditation is a real thing. When I was marketing this course, I was talking to a few of you. I got a few interesting responses with some people asking me, Rabbi, I've never seen this in the Jewish service before. Or where exactly in the Torah does it say anything about meditation? Or maybe something along the lines of, I definitely did not learn about Jewish meditation when I was growing up in Jewish day school or Jewish Hebrew school. I never learned of this. Where does this come from? So in truth, not only can meditation be used as a tool for Jewish practice and Jewish worship, but it's actually an age-old Jewish practice. It's a practice that predates any record of the most famous Eastern meditation traditions. Literally, I think the first recorded meditations, I know Orna, pretty sure she's on Facebook or she's going to be watching the recording. Orna herself has a lot of, you guys remember Orna, right? Ariana's mom. So Orna has a lot of experience. She spent a lot of time in the Far East, and I'm pretty sure she would know this, but I think the first known record of meditation is actually in India, around 1500 BCE. And in comparison, what we'll see right now is actually that in Jewish tradition, Avraham Avinu, Abraham, was born in 1812 BCE. So Judaism has its own rich history and culture of unbroken practice of meditation that is actually an integral part of Jewish life. As you'll see in text 1, Sandy, if you don't mind reading for us, meditation is so central to Judaism that the founding fathers of Judaism, the Avot, the patriarchs, were avid meditators. Avid meditators. So Sandy, if you don't mind reading text 1 on page number 3, so we can all see where we see that. This is a quote from the Medrash.
Okay,
Text
meditation is organic to Judaism, serving a sizable role in Jewish life and practice. It can be traced back to the patriarchs and our people and religion, who spent most of their days in meditation, and it is ritualized in Judaism as part of the formal practices of daily prayer. Okay. In addition, meditation appears in multiple forms to fill a variety of roles in Jewish life. Now I understand exactly where you're coming from, because I didn't, when you said meditation, I thought, wow.
Right.
Thank you.
Let's actually read, this is a quote from the Medrash on page 3, text 1, career meditators.
The patriarchs chose to be shepherds so that they could be alone in the wilderness, where the air is clean and pure, and they would be far from other people, for the sake of secluding themselves in divine meditation, like David.
There we go. So here we have that actually we learned from this Medrash is that the patriarchs spent their time away from civilization. Again, they were not near civilization a lot. And why did they do this? Because they wanted to be able to meditate on God. Well, obviously, we don't have their exact meditation practices on record, but we do know that they developed a very strong spiritual awareness and a deep relationship with God. So this is one place where we see an age-old practice, and that it was such a big deal that they were avid meditators. Another place that we find meditation being central to Jewish life is prayer. So if you open a prayer book, we have a very set text and a very ritualized text for our prayer service. But prayer in the Torah is actually the term in Torah for prayer is called avodah shebalev, which translates to the service of the heart. And if you look in the definition of prayer in Hebrew, the word tefillah, it actually has a number of meanings. And all of those meanings point to the role of its meditative exercise. I want you to look at page 4 in your student books. The word tefillah, prayer, right?
Mhm.
So one place we see it is actually a place in the prophets and one in the Mishnah, right? So one place we see it is if one commits a crime against another, he will be judged by a judge. So we see that also points to an introspective exercise of self-judgment. The second place we see it is actually in the Mishnah, that one who glues an earthenware vessel, which means a contemplative practice of cementing a relationship with the divine. Now, obviously, like I said before, this is not a course on prayer. We could and we should dedicate a course, and we will one day have a course on what it means to pray. But this is a course about the actual meditation practice, which may connect to certain prayers, but it's not about prayer. Fran, do you mind if you come close to your mic? Do you mind reading for us text 2, meditative prayer?
We must serve with reverence. The early pious sages were taught and thought.
We don't really hear you, or maybe it's just me.
I don't hear either.
How about now?
Much
Yep.
better. Thank you.
Okay. We must approach prayer with reverence. The early pious sages would pause and thought for 1 hour so that they could focus their hearts on God and only then pray.
So if you see, this was the ritual that the sages had every single day. Okay, they used to, before they prayed, they took an hour. Let's say they started praying at 8 a.m., 7 a.m., they would pause in thought for an hour from 7 to 8, right? Why? So they can focus their hearts on God and then pray. So they spent a full hour every day before prayer just meditating. So we see over here that even though it's not very well known, meditation is an authentic part of Jewish practice. It's a real part of Judaism. We see that the patriarchs spent their days in isolation as shepherds so they can meditate. And one of the key places we see it in Judaism, we see meditation as being a key player in Judaism is in meditation is in prayer. So Sandy, you touched upon one of them before, but can you maybe mention to me, as this is the question on page number 6, can you think of several ways in which meditation might advance Jewish goals?
Well, just on concentrating for that hour before prayer, which I'm guilty, I don't do, it would, bring you in a better connection to pray to Hashem.
Right.
It'll
make you more
and touch
present.
upon your own heart, what you're doing, instead of, oh yeah, I'm going to make breakfast, I'm going to make coffee, that kind of
Right.
thing.
Exactly. So there are a few forms of Jewish meditation. Each one has its own techniques, its own goals. But before we go further, I think there's a very important disclaimer I'm going to have to make before we get into the meat of the meditation today, which is that Jewish meditation can actually mean a few different things. And I think it's very important to clarify what we mean when we use the term Jewish meditation throughout this course. So obviously, as you all know, if you go on social media, you go online, you go anywhere, you'll see courses, all types of classes for meditation, different practices. They come in all shapes and sizes. And there are different groups and centers. They offer different goals and results, from the most practical to the most mystical. But I think for the sake of this course, we can divide all of the meditation practices as they relate to Judaism, of course, into three broad categories. Okay, so category number one are meditation classes and courses that are totally foreign to Judaism. And what I mean by that is that it's part of a system. There are practices that are part of a system of idolatry, of paganism, or that they stem from those places. And obviously, this is not a part of the course of meditation from Sinai. I can't encourage you enough to avoid those because they're detrimental to the Jewish soul. Category number two are the neutral meditation practices, which have no religious goals or basis. They're designed to relax. Actually, many athletes, if you ask many athletes what they do before a game or before a sport, they go through these meditative practices to better their performance. There are health benefits. Some of them are even peppered with Jewish ideas and texts that practice in the Jewish setting with Jewish themes and Jewish spins. They can have practical religious benefits, but ultimately they don't grow. They didn't come out of Judaism. And the course is not even going to be about those practices either, because they're just not the subject of these lessons. But here we're going to discuss, throughout this course, we're going to discuss the organically Jewish meditation practices. These are the practices that are organic to Judaism. They're rooted in Jewish texts and Jewish traditions and practice. Now, ironically, I want you to open to your page 6 in your student books. You'll see that there are 3 primary Hebrew words that we encounter when we open any Jewish texts and tradition when they reference meditation. So anytime meditation is referenced, these are the 3 words that are usually used. Okay? So we have the word hitbodedut. It's in figure 1.2. You guys see where I'm talking about?
Yep.
Figure 1.2, it says hitbodedut, which is seclusion. The practice is transcendence meditation. We'll get to that later. There's hitbonenut, contemplation, right? Where are we? And then kavanah, which is focus, mindful awareness or intention meditation. So over the next 6 classes, we're going to be exploring these 3 key areas of meditation, the roles they play in Jewish life, and how they can help us live deeper and more meaningful lives. Just going to give you a 30-second overview, an outline of the journey we're going to be taking together throughout this course. Today's lesson is going to be about mind control. We'll be learning a mind control exercise that can help us overcome negative feelings and emotions and create positivity. Next week is going to be about spirituality. We're going to explore the meaning of spirituality and how meditation can be a tool to experience spirituality. Lesson 3 is about living in the moment, how meditation can help you be fully present and value each moment. Lesson 4 is going to be about bringing meditation to your life. We're going to be applying our Jewish meditations to practical areas of life so that we live our life with more purpose and meaning. Lesson 5 is going to be about divine presence, how to cultivate a powerful and profound awareness of Hashem, of God around us, and learn how that awareness can lead us to more joyful lives, purposeful lives. And finally, in lesson 6 is going to be the active meditations, where we're going to study and learn how the relationship between meditation and action are, which is how mitzvot, a commandment from Hashem, can serve as both an anchor, can serve both as a meditative idea in the world, but also as an active meditation itself. So this is the very general outline, but now let's get into the meditation practices in Judaism. So I know that was a little bit of a lengthy introduction, but I think it was very important nonetheless. So for those of you okay, there we go. Okay. We miss you too, Henry. So before we even get into the actual practice of what is the meditation, Jewish meditation is focused on enhancing our relationship with God and deepening our Jewish engagement. Happens to be as a side benefit to these goals, it also provides a very practical tool to have a more balanced and healthy living. Now, one of the common reasons, I've heard this from other people, and Sandy, Fran, and Mark, and those of you on Facebook, I'm sure one of the common reasons why you've joined this course, besides studying some Torah, is why do people search for meditation today? I think one of the most common reasons is to reduce their negative experiences and stress levels. After all, who doesn't want to be happy? We all want life to be happy, but we all know that whether we like it or not, life throws us in different directions. And it can create some negative feelings and emotions. And it puts us in a mood that's not very good. It can make us feel angry or hurt or anxious, worried, frustrated, any unwanted feeling. And these feelings often weigh us down, and they can have a very negative impact on our lives. So in today's lesson, we're going to explore one of the fundamental parts of Jewish meditation and how that fundamental lesson can be used as a tool to overcome our negative emotions. So this is our third exercise. If you can open to page number 7, student page 7, is I want you to record, to write down, or to think about a negative experience that you had in the last month. Think of a negative experience. It can be today, it can be anytime in the last month. And then I want you to write down or think about the personal impact that resulted from the negative feelings that this experience created. I'll give you 20 seconds. Again, think of a negative experience you had and try to see the impact that it caused from this experience. Any of you willing to share, or it's private?
I was sick for 3 out of the 4 weeks.
You were what out of 4 weeks?
Sick.
Okay. And what kind of impact did it have?
It wasn't good.
How did it make you feel? Besides the
Lousy and miserable.
Not in a good mood.
No, isolated.
Okay. So obviously, it's not very hard to think of something that was a negative experience. Now, some of them may not be extremely overwhelming. This was obviously more overwhelming, friend, but they're always unwanted. And these negative experiences often have a very real effect on our moods, and they don't let us function normally. Many of us struggle with these recurring feelings that sometimes feel like a never-ending cycle. I have this sometimes, that try as we might, we can't escape this whole of a negative thought and these patterns that really have a negative impact on us. So the good news is that this struggle is not inevitable. We can win over these emotions. Now, I'm sure you're thinking, really? I've been trying all these years and I've never, ever experienced any real successful method. So does the rabbi think that with one class, he's going to teach me how to overcome these unwanted feelings? My answer is yes. I am very convinced of this, and I'll tell you how. But in order to really understand, let's backtrack a little bit like we like doing during our classes. We are not hostages to our feelings. As human beings, we have the power to overcome them, right? We see this clearly actually in the Torah. Mark, if you don't mind reading for us, text 3 on page 8. This is a quote directly from the Torah in Deuteronomy. But if you don't mind reading as close as you can to the computer screen so we can hear you clearly. No, can't hear you.
Working.
There we go. I hear you now.
All right. As you approach the battle, the Kohen shall come near and speak to the people. He shall say to them, "Hear, Israel, today you are approaching the battle against your enemies. Do not be discouraged. Do not be afraid. Do not be alarmed or terrified because of them."
So here we have that there's a scenario where there are soldiers going into battle. They're going It's a real battle. So they have justified reason to be very, very afraid. And on the way to war, the Kohen, which is the spiritual, I guess you want to call the chaplain of the Jewish army, would instruct the soldiers to not be afraid. Again, they weren't encouraged to march on despite their fears. They were commanded to not fear at all. Why? Because Torah expects us somehow, I'm sure you're wondering how, that we can master over seemingly natural fears and our feelings, even fears that are caused by real danger. So from the perspective of Judaism, you absolutely have the power to overcome your inner emotional and negative feelings. So the question is obviously, how do we do it? So my question to you, to those of you either on Facebook, feel free to comment. I'm looking at the comments. Maybe you can list for me some of the methods that you personally use to overcome any negative feelings and emotions. So when you're going through something that you feel is a very negative thing, what do you usually do to overcome it? You can either write it down, share it, put it in the chat box, whatever you want.
Well, one of the ways that I try to overcome,
Again, you got to speak clear. Sorry, Mark. Here you go. Yeah.
one of the ways that I try to do it is to figure out what the problem is and figure out a solution. And also to realize that this thing is not forever and that eventually things will change.
Okay. So that's two things. Number one, you try to get to the bottom of it. What's the root of the issue? And number two is that it's just temporary. Okay. Sandy, you have anything else to add?
Well, I wish that when I've got negativity, I could actually know that it's going to be temporary. That's something I need to learn. One of the things I'll do is I'll play with the cat or I'll sing. Yeah,
Okay.
that kind of thing. Just to change that whole atmosphere of worry and negativity and all that.
Yep. Those are all great ideas. Now, obviously, there are many great, and I'm sure you can literally Google these things. There are many great and helpful tools out there. But today we're going to learn a very simple, but a very powerful mindfulness technique that will enable you to stop the cycle of feeling bad. And it's actually going to improve your mood. But as always, just before we get to the best part, before we study the technique, we have to really get a better understanding of the way we function as human beings. So this is really getting to it, but we have to understand, how do we function as human beings? Once we have a good understanding of how our consciousness works, we'll be better equipped to appreciate what the process of meditation does and how we can actually use it. So for those of you who have joined the women's class on Kabbalah, the coffee and Kabbalah, you may have touched upon this a little bit with Leah. This is a Kabbalah, a mystical concept, but this is really about Jewish mysticism and how every human soul functions and what it's made up of. So if this goes over your head, don't worry. I'm going to summarize it at the end either way. So hopefully I'll go slowly and I'll try to explain it. But this is a mind and heart thing. So if you want, you can follow on page number 10 in your student books, figure 1.3. This is a very famous Kabbalah concept, and you'll see this in the Tanya, in the Chabad philosophy. You'll see this very, very, very often in Tanya, which is that according to Jewish mysticism, every human soul is made up, it's comprised of 10 unique attributes, 10 functions. And through these functions, we are able to explore the world around us and interact with the world around us. If you want to see the map of this, of the 10 functions, the soul map, literally, I'll just quickly go through it. If you have it on page 10, figure 1.3. So it's Chachma, Bina, and Dat, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. That's one category. And the next 7 is Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut, which is kindness and love, restraint and fear, harmony and compassion, victory and ambition, splendor and humility, connection and royalty and receptiveness. Now, these functions are divided into 2 categories. You guys notice that it's 2 different types of
Emotions.
oh, sorry, I'm a little late, but thank you, Henry. Breathing techniques, yes, we're going to learn about this as well. Thank you, Henry, for bringing that up. So there are 2 categories. There are 2 groups within the 10 functions of the human soul. Okay. In the original Hebrew, they're categorized as seichel, sechel, and midot, which is our intellect and our emotions. Okay, so this is the 2 categories in the 10 functions. The first 3 are our intellect, the next 7 are our midot, our emotions. What is the difference between our intellect and emotions? Now, this goes without saying, I don't have to tell you, but I think it's important nonetheless. Our intellect, our intellectual powers is what we usually refer to as our mind, as our brain. It's the part of us that thinks, it's the part of us that processes things. We use these powers to collect data, to analyze the data, to judge it, to make determinations based off of it. And this is really our capacity to think and to understand ideas, to solve problems, right? And then there's the emotions, which is usually referred to our heart. It's the function that we have to feel positively and negatively. And we use them, we function with them to love something, to hate something, to get excited, to get angry, to feel happy, to feel sad. They're a part of us that makes us drawn to certain things or repulsed by others. Now, by default, the way the soul operates is actually very interesting. The way the soul operates is that first, it kind of flows from the intellect into the emotion. Our consciousness flows from the intellect into the emotion. What does that mean? It's very fancy English. But what it practically means is how we understand something is what shapes the way we feel about something. Again, how we understand something is the way we're going to feel it. Okay, I'm going to repeat that one more time. The way you understand something is what shapes the way you feel about that item, about that thing. I want to read text 4, the root of emotion. Fran, if you don't mind reading text 4 on page 11. If you can come close. Oh, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Fran. Unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, there you
Yes.
go.
Okay. The human soul is divided into 2 categories, intelligence and emotion. The intellectual faculties, namely Hakma, wisdom, Bina, understanding, and Da'at, knowledge, are referred to as the mothers and the source of the emotions. For the emotions are the offspring of the intelligence.
Right. So very, very simply is that our minds develop an idea. They understand something, they judge a situation, and our hearts naturally follow very close behind, which leads us to feel a certain way and respond a certain way. By the way, just as an example, we were talking about war before. When we understand the dangers of a certain behavior, what happens? Our mind judges it as a dangerous act, and we become afraid. Right?
Mhm.
When we develop an understanding of how beneficial something can be, what happens? We start liking it and we want to do it because we know it's beneficial. When we realize that someone, God forbid, took advantage of us or did something wrong to us or bad to us, what happens? We start feeling angry. We start feeling hurt. So our mind judges and processes the data, and then that controls how we feel about something. So that's layer number one of the human soul and the human psyche, actually. There's one more layer before we get into the actual meditative practice, which is there's one more layer into the soul that we need to learn about, which is how is the soul expressed? How does it function? We know that it's divided into intellect and emotions, but the soul actually has three outlets, three ways that it actually functions with. And again, I'll explain more in depth what that means, but they're referred to as the garments of the soul. And again, Leah in the Coffee and Kabbalah will speak about this, I'm pretty sure more, but these are the garments of the soul. If you look at figure 1.4 on page 11, you'll see that there are three soul garments. Garments, I'll tell you in a minute why I call it garments. What are the garments? They're machshava, dibur, and maaseh, which is thinking, speaking, and doing. Why do we call these three domains garments? What do you guys think? Why do we call them clothing? What does that have to do with clothing?
It covers what's going on, what you're thinking. It's a good thing or a not such a good thing. It's going to cover that thought.
Okay, interesting. On the other hand, it also expresses what you're doing.
Expresses better.
So I'll tell you what Jewish mysticism and the Tanya and Chassidus has to explain on this. Why they called garments? Because as opposed to your body, your body is you. This is actually you. Garments, on the other hand, are things that you can put on and take off whenever you want. Meaning your intelligence and your emotions are you. This is you. This is what you're made up of. But your thoughts, your speech, and your action are ways in which you express yourself. But it's not you. That's not who you are. Let me give you an example. All of you have smartphones, I assume, all right? And I'm sure you have applications, you have apps on your smartphone, right? You don't have to be very tech savvy to understand the analogy, just so you know. So picture the 10 attributes, the intellect and the emotions, like apps on your phone. They're downloaded on the phone. They take up storage space on your phone, but they don't do anything. They can't function without an operating system to function on. In other words, you have to open your phone, you have to press the screen to activate the app and use it. So the garments are the display or the operating system. Our soul powers are only active on through the garments of thought, speech, and action. And they have to be activated by one of them to function. If you don't have thought, speech, and action, then intelligence and emotions mean nothing. They just stay in wherever they are. In order for them to actually function and come out in practice, they come out in practice in your thoughts, in what you say, and what you do. Those things express your intellect and your emotions, right? So if you look at figure 1.5, on page 12, you'll see that first there is an idea. First is an idea. This is the regular soul process. That leads you to judgment, to understanding, to analyze what is this idea. Once you finish analyzing it, that causes you to feel that way about something. Right? So in summary, the soul has three garments that it uses to express itself. And these garments are the backdrop for the soul's operation. So where is this all leading us? Where is this leading us? So here we are. Here we are at the actual, the actual meditation, which is that when we use this model of consciousness, of realizing how the human soul is comprised, we have intellect and emotions. Then we have three garments and how they're expressed. So we can identify, interestingly, take for example that you're actually hurt. Someone said something really not nice to you. They're taking advantage of you. So when we use this model, we can identify 3 elements in the process of an unwanted feeling. Okay? There's the emotion itself, right? That you feel hurt, you feel taken advantage of. Number 2 is there's the understanding that you were taken advantage of that gave birth to the emotion, right? And then number 3 is the garment that facilitated the process, which is most commonly your thought. So again, you have the emotion itself, you have the understanding that caused the emotion, that gave birth to the emotion. And then you have the garment, probably your thought, that actually that facilitated this whole system, this whole process. Now, how do you combat a negative feeling? Now that you know that there's 3 different elements here, you can try to fight it head on the emotional level, on the intellectual level, which is usually what the level we think of course, I think one of you mentioned before, try to get to the bottom of it, intellectually, how did this come to be? But to be honest, it's extremely challenging and can often require a lifetime of effort to overcome, which is, by the way, why all of you are thinking, obviously, this is why I never am able to overcome it, because I can't just get to the bottom of everything and say, oh, okay, this was the bottom of it, so now it's not really such a big deal. It requires an insane amount of effort and strength to shift your understanding and judgment, because you understood already that this person took advantage of you. You already analyzed the data. Now, to shift your understanding, it takes incredible discipline to be able to diffuse an emotion that's very justified, right? Imagine, again, God forbid, someone takes advantage of you. You're supposed to get onto the intellectual level and to discipline yourself that it's really not such a big deal. The person didn't really take advantage of you. It's a very, very, very hard thing to do. Very. Which is why we all fail all the time. Right? Earlier today, I had a phone call with someone. Not locally, don't worry. I had a phone call with someone about something we were doing. And something they said really, really, really got to me. And it very much frustrated me. Of course, it frustrated me. Like, seriously, now you come up with this idea? After we worked so hard on something? So I could have said, get to the bottom of it and try to fight it on an intellectual or emotional level. And where did this come from? How can we shift our understanding? It doesn't work. It honestly doesn't work. Sorry to be frank and sorry to be disappointing about this thing, but honestly, it's not going to work very often. You may once in a while get there. And I know one of you mentioned also before about it being temporary, but even temporary, some things are not temporary. Some things are permanent. They're permanent. So how do we get away from this process? So we learned earlier that the thoughts are garments of the soul and are not the soul itself. It's an extremely important point because it means that your thoughts aren't you. Let me say this again. Your thoughts are not you. You can observe them, and just like a piece of clothing, you can change them. They don't define who you are. They don't control you. They're a behavior, just like speech and action are. You can opt in to think like this. You can opt in to say this. You can opt in to do this. Or you can opt out of thinking, speaking, or doing this. They're garments. So we can decide to opt in or to opt out. Right? So text 5, Sandy, if you don't mind reading for us, is a very, very powerful line of how we can control our thoughts.
The mind naturally controls the heart. Okay. Humans were created from birth with the ability to exercise willpower to control the drives of our hearts so that they not be expressed in our behavior, speech, or thought. We are able to divert our attention completely from things our hearts crave to something entirely different.
Right. So this method is called meta thinking, which is the ability to think about your thoughts and by extension, to redirect your thoughts. Okay, so now that we know that we can master our thoughts and we really have control over our thoughts and we can change them, how does this help us deal with unwanted feelings? Right? I want to take just a quick break just to think over the next section. Just give me a minute. Excuse me just for a minute. Sorry about that. But honestly, that was actually an exercise. The reason why we paused was actually an exercise. The reason why I asked you to take a pause is if I can ask you, Sandy, don't worry, you don't have to be detailed, but what were you thinking about during this quiet time?
The very next thing that you were going to say, and if it was going to help us to master our thoughts, of some sorts, master our hurt feelings, especially.
Sandy, you rock. I think you're the only one who's actually thinking about the class itself. My mind was wandering already to Facebook.
Oh, dear.
I thought about the class.
Really?
I thought about the class, yes.
Yeah, I thought about the class too. I was thinking about Facebook and making sure that it's all in sync and
I
everything.
thought about how when I get to the point where somebody gets me really angry by hurting my feelings, I cut them off out of my life.
Oh, okay. So we're going to talk about that in a second, actually. Okay. So as we just saw, for the most part, our minds have a mind of their own, and we're often not even aware of our thoughts. I saw a recent study that an average person, give a guess how many thoughts we have a day. A day.
Wow.
A lot.
Give a random guess.
2,000. I don't know.
Okay, 2,000.
I say 5,000.
5,000. So according to the study, an average person, average, is 6,000 thoughts a day.
Okay, that's pretty good.
6,000 thoughts a day. Now, how many of those
Random
can you
thoughts?
actually remember?
Is this like random thoughts or
Anything,
purposely thinking?
anything. Now, how many of those can you remember? Not very many. Of the 6,000 thoughts, 6,000, right? And the reason why, and you just mentioned, Fran, if they're conscious thoughts or unconscious thoughts, when the thoughts are unconscious, then automatically there are tools in the hands of our minds and hearts, because what we experience in our personality and many other factors unconsciously shape the way we judge something, which automatically produces our feelings and reactions. All this are subconsciously in our thinking. That's why we react to things that are way beyond our control, in ways that are beyond our control. But thoughts don't have to be unconscious. We have the ability to think deliberately and to be in control of our thought process. By intentionally, purposefully controlling our thoughts, we actually reverse the process of our soul's consciousness, and we use the thought to shift the focus of our mind and heart. Because when we choose what we think, what happens? Again, if we choose what we think, we control what our mind processes and what emotions flow from there. If we cut off a negative thought, the negative feeling that was associated with it will disappear. Now, again, this doesn't deal with the issue itself. It doesn't. It really doesn't. But what it does do, it changes when we change our thoughts from being, just products of our mind and our heart to actually controlling them, we can redirect our focus. Okay, so we're going to do a quick meditation now. It's a 6-minute video. I'm going to share my screen. And I suggest you actually follow the meditations. On on the, here, where are we? Why is it not opening? 1 second, guys. Oh, sorry, 1 second. Okay, I'm going to share my screen here, and I encourage you to join the lesson that Dr. Label Wolf. So if he tells you to close your eyes, you can close your eyes. This was a real meditative practice here. I'm just making sure that you actually. Here, 1 second. No, my bad. Here we are. Okay. You guys see the screen?
Yes.
Just give me a thumbs up if you do. I actually can't see it.
Did he say it?
You guys see the screen? Sandy? Hmm. 1 second, guys.
Yes, I see it fine.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to play it right now. Here we go.
Thoughts produce feelings. Therefore, even a microsecond of thought in any situation produces an emotion. If we have negative emotions, we can simply displace them by replacing them with a new thought. Not a difficult process, and let me share with you a meditation to try to carry out that particular function. So gently close your eyes and just become aware of the flow of your thoughts. What thoughts are flowing through onto the screen of your consciousness? And as you become aware of the thought, see if you can identify a feeling that arises as a consequence of that thought. I would like you to take yourself back to a moment, to a time when you might have been embarrassed, a situation of personal embarrassment. Try to locate that particular incident, refreshing it in your mind. Note all the points that cause the embarrassment. Become aware of the people who are present. And become acutely aware of your feelings of embarrassment at that time. And now, let's switch that thought. I want you to think back to a moment when you were supremely happy, ecstatic, somewhere in your life where you felt absolute joy. Recall that moment. Where were you? Who was there? Can you recall the voices, the colors, the background sounds. And now consider, where did that image of embarrassment of a few moments ago disappear? The feelings went away because new thoughts were brought into the consciousness of your mind. Let's try that again. Now think back to a time where you hurt yourself physically, maybe injured yourself, sprained an ankle. Take yourself back there and feel the pain. Simulate it. Recognize how you felt. Even complex feelings. Beyond the pain. Consequences. And now, turn your mind to a birthday party in your honor that you may have experienced as a child, as an adult. What is going on at the party? Who is there? Singing. Maybe a cake. Maybe candles. How do you feel? That same happiness has been recreated. What happened to that feeling of hurt and pain of a few moments ago when you hurt yourself back then? You changed your thoughts, and therefore your feelings changed. Let's learn an important lesson. Moach shalit al halev. The mind determines the outcomes of the emotions. Change your mind, and you change your feelings. When feeling down, depressed, change your thoughts. And in so doing, your whole emotional makeup transforms in the same moment.
All right. So this was a pretty powerful exercise. Welcome back to reality. It's important to clarify that in practice, and like we just saw in the video, controlling your thoughts doesn't mean that you battle unwanted thoughts or you actively attempt not to think them. Because as we see, those techniques don't work. Their approach has to be to stop the negative thought process in its tracks. When a negative thought pops into your mind, attempting to reason, to try to, push it away isn't only ineffective, it actually sometimes deepens the pathway of that particular thought in your brain. And it solidifies its place in your mind. Like sometimes struggling against quicksand, that the harder you try, you only get stuck deeper and deeper. The famous Russian novelist, I forgot his name. He says that try to pose for yourself this task. He says, Don't think of a polar bear. Okay, all of you watching, don't think of a polar bear. And and he says, and you will see that the cursed thing will come to your mind every minute. It's the way it is, right? When something happens that triggers you into going down the spiral of negative thoughts, just isolate that voice, something similar to what you were saying before, Fran, and isolate that voice in your head and picture it as talking to you through a telephone. Now imagine someone is riling you up. They're either, God forbid, being abusive, they're cursing you out, they're saying nasty things to you to make you upset. At the other end of the phone line. So instead of figuring out a way to answer them back or deal with them, in which case you'll probably be dragged down even more by the emotional abuse, you have a simple choice. Hang up the phone and disconnect, right? The same is true with your thoughts. Just hang up on the thought pattern and cut it off. Not trying to think about it doesn't work either, as we just saw with the polar bear. So because you can't stop thinking, the way to rid yourself of a negative thought is actually to think about something else in its place. This is the meditation right here. Exactly what we just saw in the video. A person can only have one thought at a time. So when you switch your thinking, your active thinking, to something else, then automatically the original thought process that was going through your head that you were thinking is thrown away. Right? As we see in text 7, I'll read this quickly on page 16. The primary method, this is a quote from the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rebbe of Chabad. The primary method of removing worrying thoughts from your mind, this is the Jewish meditation. It's all summed up in one text. What's the primary method? Redirecting your mind toward other matters. You can replace them with thoughts of necessary material matters that bring you joy. And you can contemplate God's Torah that delights at the heart. The latter is best achieved through creating a fixed schedule of daily Torah study, which is particularly effective with a study partner. Because when you notice an unwanted thought that creeps into your head, and we all know this happens very, very, very often, what should you do? Distract yourself by exchanging that thought for a more positive thought, which, by the way, is a win-win. Because when you think about the thought that actually calms you, the unwanted thought, and by the way, I actually do this a lot. Leah and I, this is a secret, Leah and I have gone on vacation to a really far-fetched place called the Maldives. Really far. We went there a few years ago. It's like paradise, that place. Anytime that I'm really feeling frustrated, I know it sounds funny, I actually think of the peaceful waters, the paradise that it was, the calmness. You don't see a soul, it's calm, you don't see anything in front of you for miles and miles and miles. So when you invest yourself in a thought like that actually calms you, so automatically, number one, the unwanted thought is thrown away. So the negativity goes away. And in its place is a positive thought that actually shapes your mood and fills your life for the better. But also filling your mind with a positive thought. The second win is that it also creates a positive feedback loop, that the positive thinking directs the mind to positive things and activates your positive emotions, which automatically create a positive attitude, a positive feeling. So the third Chabad Rebbe actually says that it always pays to have an uplifting thought, a powerful, a positive thought. I told you what my positive thought was. As a rabbi, it should be a little more spiritual than that, which you can always pull out, your back pocket meditation. You can always pull out this thought that you can always meditate on whenever you need. It could be a fascinating science article. It could be about a happy memory. It could be an upcoming vacation, a past vacation. It could be your children. It could be your loved ones. It could be a peaceful scene. Whatever works for you. The Tzemach Tzedek suggests that actually you should have an idea of Torah, because when you have an idea of Torah that brings you joy, whatever, which is also an important thing. I actually suggest you have always one powerful Torah thought in mind that you can always go back to. So this is the power of Jewish meditation. This is exactly the power, and this is the takeaway, that we spent, the last hour studying the spiritual technology that really is a very practical technique how that can really enhance your lives. Because when you implement this simple but very effective meditative tool, you can live more calmly. You can actually control your feelings. You can produce positive feelings. So obviously, the theory alone is not enough. It takes a lot of discipline practice. So before we go to our 5 takeaways and conclude, and sorry, our 3 takeaways and conclude the class, I want to show you one final video from the same place. I apologize if it took me a little longer last time. It's going to be a shorter video. This is a 3-minute video. Sorry. Second. Apologize, it's taking another second. I have to learn Zoom a little better. Is not working. I may have to skip it if it doesn't work in the next 10 seconds. My apologies. I'll just post it on Facebook if not. Okay, not working well. I'm going to post it on Facebook. But the takeaways from today's lesson is as follows. The takeaway is, number one, sorry, I'm just going to close the video. Number one is that you have to practice being aware of and actively controlling your thoughts. Because at any given moment in the day, you have to pause and bring your attention to what you're thinking. So you can do this when you have an unwanted thought coming to mind, or even without that. Just shift the thinking deliberately to something more positive that you want to think about. And the more you practice being conscious of your thoughts and thinking deliberately, the more it'll become a habit. And it'll become much easier to master your thoughts. So that's number one. Practice being aware and being conscious of your thoughts. Number two is invest your mind in wholesome things. Spend a few moments every single day reading, studying, or even thinking a Torah idea or a peaceful idea, because as we saw before, our mind wanders unconsciously toward things that we're doing. And when you make a habit to have something positive that you learned or you read or you spoke about, there's a good chance that even when your mind wanders, it'll stay on something positive. So that's number two. And finally, set a time daily, and I'm sure Leah will be happy to hear that I'm saying this. For myself, is set a time daily for positive meditation. Positive meditation doesn't mean like, sitting in a fancy posture or going to a guru. It literally means dedicate a few minutes every morning. If you can't do it morning, choose a time that works for you and meditate. And like we said before, what meditate means. Meditate on the wonderful gifts that God has given you in your life. Literally. So with that, we're going to conclude lesson 1. There are quite a few things to think about. But next week we're going to speak about spirituality, because spirituality is usually, this guy's a very spiritual person, this woman's very spiritual. It's often thought of as something very distant, irrelevant. And we're going to learn next week how actually it's a very, very powerful thing that can lead to profound meaning in every experience. So that's going to be next week. But thank you for joining us, whether it was on Zoom or Facebook, or for those of you who are going to watch the rerun, which will be either on Facebook or on YouTube. But we look forward to seeing you next week at 7 p.m. And we're going to make sure that's from 7 to 8 next time without any technical glitches. But God willing that you can think about this meditation and help you overcome these unwanted feelings. With that, I want to